Welcome to Uplink, where we explore the world of digital infrastructure, uncovering the technology fueling AI and cloud innovation with the leaders making it happen. I'm your host, Michael Reid, and my guest today is Raul Martynek, CEO at DataBank. Raul offers a frontline perspective on the data center industry that's become the backbone of our digital economy and the foundation for AI's future. Let's dive in. So you've been in the data center game a while. It's an exciting, it's probably the hottest space to be, I would say, out of any industry in the world right now, maybe outside of NVIDIA. Talk us through what you're seeing on your side and put that in context with how you've been in this industry for a while and what's changed.
Sure. Yeah, no, I've been in the space, over 30 years. And
is that all?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
And, obviously people don't like to make analogies to the dot-com era, but there's definitely kind of that feel where, in the dot-com era, the internet was coming out, it was new and everyone wanted internet access, and I was in fiber and you couldn't keep up with the demand. And today, it's not fiber, it's obviously large language models and AI, and everyone wants to adopt it. And the data center is kind of the enabling, infrastructure for that, right? So it's got that same, wind at the back type of feel. So, no, it's great. You can't complain if you're a data center operator these days. If you're not doing well, then I'm not exactly sure what you're doing. And, these are really good times. I told my board in October, it's like, listen, this is the best market I've ever seen. And I only know one thing, it's not going to last forever, right? But, take advantage of it while you can.
Yeah, so it's place big bets right now. It feels like the whole world wants to place bets in data centers. And I see that you look at the experienced operators who know how to place these bets, to be clear, who are in this game. I think you just raised a whole bunch of capital.
Correct.
What's the plan there? What's that for?
No, it's exactly what you said. We had amassed about 600 acres of land across a number of markets, and in 2023, when we saw kind of the demand that was occurring, we increased our development targets, and as a result of that, we needed more capital. So for us, the money that we brought in, the $2 billion with Australian Super as our lead investor,
which is also our investor,
exactly. I now have an education in superannuation funds, which is fantastic. But
you're helping out all the Australian citizens.
We're trying to do our part. So. But in any event, so that capital is earmarked for about 850 megawatts of new development that will start coming online in 2025 through 2028, predominantly in about 10 markets, but with the most of that in 3 core markets, Dallas, Atlanta, and Northern Virginia. So to your point, yes, we're seeing an unprecedented amount of new development trying to come to the market. And a lot of that is in kind of markets that, you would never have considered as a data center market, right? And you kind of think about that in the big scheme of things. And, certainly, people are doing that because, there's available power in a particular market, or the land is cheap.
Is it also lower cost power?
Yeah, lower cost power and, cheaper land. But, fundamentally, we think that, we'd rather be in kind of these core long-term, as we call them, permanent data center markets, as kind of this technology gets adopted, it's likely the geography around how it gets adopted changes. Yeah.
And one thing I love about data centers is just crazy mind-boggling sort of metrics. And most people don't understand what that is, but you just said 800 megawatts, which is... It's no small number. I mean, there were data centers that were coming online that were like 1 megawatt or 2 megawatts or 5 or whatever. And
so the evolution's been dramatic, right? When I got to DataBank, we funded our largest data center at the time. It was in 2017. It was, a 10 megawatt data center. And people were like, wow, that's really, really big, right?
Yeah, how you feel that?
And now today, you're building 60 megawatt or 72 megawatt data centers, 84 megawatt data centers. So, and then the workloads, and the customer requirements have increased significantly as well.
Yes.
Where, again, back in 2017, a 1 megawatt opportunity was, very rare and kind of at the top of the bell curve. Today, we're doing multiple, multi-megawatt enterprise deals. And then obviously on the hyperscale side, you can get into the hundreds of megawatts on certain transactions. So the scale of the leasing has increased dramatically as well.
So the one thing I wanted to ask, everyone's jumping into this space. They're all like, I'm going to build all these data centers. I'm finding this land. I've got this. I've got power. I've got access to power and land. And that's the problem. But this thing is not a simple process. It's also not a short process. So by the time you probably find the land, get development approvals to go there, plus the power, it's not as simple as just plugging the power into the grid, because you're talking about silly amounts of power. So you've got to build substations. You've got to help with this is not easy.
It's a multi-year process.
Yeah.
Anything that you hear about today, is probably 3 to 4 years out.
Yeah. That's crazy.
You got to first, find the land. You got to close on the land.
Yeah.
You have to start your discussions with the utility. At this point, the utilities have, what's called a queue.
Yeah.
And they put you in the queue.
And transmission becomes one of the biggest issues in the queue.
Sometimes there's transmission required, which means there's right-of-way required, which means there's public hearings that are required. So, so these things are, really measured in multi-year, especially at the quantities that.
But you're building transmission, or how does that work?
No, what ends up happening is the utility, depending on the situation, depending on is there an adjacent substation, is there a new one? There might be some kind of short amount of transmission lines that need to be built to, let's say, the substation that is serving your property.
Got it.
Right, from another substation. So, and the utilities, this is what they do all day long.
Yeah.
Right.
But everyone's turning up, I'm sure.
But everyone's turning up, and there's a lot of requests, and these utilities are, getting they don't know what to do because they've never experienced anything like this.
And then you got to get all the parts. So, like I heard, like a diesel generator or something. I'm sure you can't just call them up and say, "Hey, I need a whole heap more diesel."
No, all that long, we call it long lead time equipment.
Yeah.
Those the time intervals on that are anywhere from 52 weeks to 110 weeks.
Yes.
Which means that
how are they keeping up with the production?
They have a long backlog, right?
Yeah.
And that's again you have
Which is
to.
why you can't just turn up and say, I'm going to start putting the dates.
I think, people are envisioning it's pretty easy.
Yeah.
There's a lot of moving pieces and to do it on time, on cost, right? You have to make the commitments, to the utility, deposits on their transformers and things like that. It's I'm reminded of a funny saying, right? How do you make a small fortune in data centers? And start with a big one, right? I think a lot of people are going to find that out.
That's exactly right. And the last one is you've got customers. So the other piece to this is I think there's a lot of risk in terms of how they look at this space. We look at it in terms of imagine being the company that buys all the chips and runs them, and then they just keep replacing them. Like there's a lot of capital to go into that. It's kind of like the picks and pans and shovels. I feel like the data center is the space that you can almost guarantee that this will always be required. It doesn't matter what chip it is. It's always going to be burning a whole heap of something.
We're agnostic to technology.
It doesn't matter. Yeah. And you can, and even as the tech changes, you can swap that out. We know it's always going to need to be in a data center. We're never going to go back to like a nice cold chip that just runs and everything.
In the server closet.
Yeah, exactly.
In the early 90s. Yeah, no, I don't think so. The data, ultimately, the world lives on kind of this digital platform that was created over the last 30 years.
Yeah.
It operates on this digital platform.
It's kind of woken up to it.
There's no substitute.
Yeah.
You can't put this physical stuff somewhere else.
Yes.
It has to go into a secure facility, which obviously is a data center.
Protected power, redundant power, cooling.
All that.
Yes, exactly.
Yep.
And it doesn't feel like it's slowing down. The piece is, it's a few years now since ChatGPT sort of exploded, and then all of a sudden everyone's just been rushing into this space. The hyperscalers are the biggest investors.
That's correct.
And I assume you're building a bunch of hyperscale infrastructure.
They're part of our customer base.
But you also have a huge number of data centers that we work on for what is traditional sort of colo for enterprise customers. Give us some of the metrics on that. I know you've got a whole heap. Yeah.
Yeah. No, we have a great diversified base of customers, over 2,500 customers. Obviously, the majority of them kind of enterprise or large technology. Our geography, we have the largest geographic footprint of data centers in the U.S. with 70 data centers in 26 markets, right?
Say that again, the largest
geographic footprint of data centers in the U.S.
What does that mean?
We're in more markets than any other data center operator. Yep.
Any.
Yeah, Equinix is in about 14.
Wow.
Digital's in about 17. We're in 26, right?
That's amazing. I did not know that.
Yeah, it spans across, as we call them, tier 1 markets and tier 2 markets. Yeah, and obviously you guys have, come into a lot of our multi-tenant data centers because they're ideal from, the customers, the clients needing connectivity solutions.
Yeah.
And a lot of these, as you know, we've done, you guys are in our Salt Lake data center,
Yeah.
or you're in our Kansas City data center.
We want to be everywhere it makes sense.
You're in our, I think, Pittsburgh data center, right? So you've extended your network into more of these tier 2 locations where there's less connectivity options. And it's certainly kind of, the on-demand connectivity options that you guys offer. So I think it's been a great partnership. It really enhances the value of our facility.
Yeah, well, we appreciate it. And the goal is to give that connectivity to all of your customers to make it easier for them to land. There's always a lot of discussion around like, hey, what right now? It's like find power, find land that can get access to that power and then build. The other piece, which I think a lot of people either sort of think as an afterthought, is connectivity.
Yep.
And it's like probably the last sort of leg stool, what was it? Last chair in the stool. Last leg. It's the last leg in the stool. We'll get there. Last leg in the stool. Connectivity is this piece that often gets forgotten.
Yeah.
But if you look at it, this is where we sort of come into play and enable that access for all of these different customers that you've got in there. How do you think about connectivity when you're looking at the build? Is that
it's core, right?
Yeah.
And I'll give you a perfect example. A couple of years ago, data center development in Dallas was for the most part on the north part of the downtown.
Yeah.
But that place has grown so much so far north, it's gotten too far away. So people started to think about South Dallas, where there hadn't been historically a lot of the development. And it was really a dark fiber kind of connectivity company that built a network down there to enable a single hyperscale deployment. By doing that, it kind of unlocked that geography so that it is now becoming a massive data center cluster. We're, as an example, building a 480 megawatt campus down there. 860 megawatt buildings, and we have a lot of neighbors that are doing the same thing, right?
Yeah,
that connectivity.
So that's funny. It's like it became the fiber that they ran and probably some multiple ducts for a couple of hyperscalers. Then opened up the market for a whole range of others.
So really, I follow the fiber.
Follow the fiber, yeah.
Follow the fiber, and then you can figure out, good locations to develop, new capacity.
What do you think about everyone else that's sort of decided all of a sudden to be a data center company right now at this moment in time?
It's a free country, right? There's no restrictions. Look, it's obviously, there's a lot of excitement about AI. To state the obvious, the data centers, the enabling infrastructure, like we talked about. When you have, the president-elect introducing someone on TV that, is some unknown, Middle Eastern investor that wants to invest $20 billion in data centers, you kind of know that there's a lot of interest in the sector, right? But look, ultimately, we have, a business with, that's been around for a long time. We have a track record with, these very demanding customers. We have a development pipeline that aligns, we believe, with their needs. So yes, of course, there's going to be, more players in the space, but we think that, our customers are going to choose, carefully.
Yeah.
And a lot of these new entrants really aren't there to build a business. They're there to, create opportunistic, monetization event around some powered land. So like everything, the water will find its level.
Yes. No, I suspect it will.
Yep.
And you'll be floating on top. And
we hope so. Yeah. We hope so. We'll keep the boat watertight.
So is there any other things you wanted to sort of get out? Anything you wanted to share that I can ask you about?
No, just, it's a great conference. I hope you guys are having a good one as well.
Yeah.
And, it's also indicative of how much interest there in the space. A lot of new faces here, a lot of new pools of capital trying to figure out, how to invest in the sector.
I don't think I've ever seen so many private equity and public market folks coming here. Even a lot of our investors have turned up. I know they never used to turn up or didn't turn up in years gone by. So I think there's a lot of folks really interested in this space. It's a mixture of either probably trying to find places to deploy capital, place bets, or just to figure out what the next phase of this is. Yeah. It's very, I think it's, they're super excited, but they're also trying to figure out what plays out. It's actually tricky. Like, I think you're in the game. It's very hard for you to probably see around the corner. The one thing that I feel is like it's still a long way to go. Like if I look at, unlike I think .com, where it's all sort of land. Well, look, who knows? We Nostradamus looking back at all, but just the amount of training that needs to continually be done in that race. It's unlike just rolling out fiber to get connectivity to get to the internet.
Yep.
This seems like almost like an insurmountable problem because you can train more and more and more and faster and faster and faster, and then you're not going to stop training. So it's sort of like, unlike you train it once and just leave it, you're going to have to keep training these things. So
yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you. It's very early innings, right? If you think about the technology, number one, you got to believe that, hey, this technology is impactful, right?
Yeah.
That this kind of large language models, transformer-based large language models are going to make real business.
Every day we see massive impact.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think, the answer to that is it is. And now it's really a question of adoption. And it's a question of how do you incorporate that technology into, what we do today, the way we operate as, humans and as a business world.
Yeah.
And I think that takes a little time, but certainly there's enough evidence already to show, for example, we're seeing companies use this technology quite a bit for software development, right? It's a legitimate way to accelerate that activity, which is a very core activity. So they're already finding kind of, verticals where
that's right.
The LLM is, a really good solution. And I think, we're only at the beginning of, as what I like to call, enterprise AI adoption, right?
Yeah.
People are still figuring it out. And I think over the next couple of years, we'll see more and more use cases that will then drive more demand.
Agreed. I had an interesting conversation last night. I mean, a few things. One, Jensen, what's so amazing is Jensen, it's like he's innovating 10 times faster than he was before. So by the end of the year, they seem to come out with a newer chip, a faster chip, and not just like a little bit faster, significantly faster. It's putting, I think one of the guys was telling me that they're running these things, they're burning out pretty rapidly because they're running like 150 kilowatts into this rack. It's just like insanely hot and they're burning out in a year. But even then, by the time you finish the year anyway, it's moved on to the new chips or the new chipset, which is, I don't know, 100 million times faster than the previous one. So it's like, I'm not sure how anyone keeps up to this. It's like you just buy the chips and all of a sudden by the time you've deployed them, it's obsolete.
I mean, it is an extremely aggressive release cycle, especially for semiconductor, which is usually measured in years, right? And these people have 3 generations over 10 years.
Unbelievable.
Look, most of the stuff that's in our data center is still, H100s, right?
Yeah.
The Grace Hopper platform. People spend a lot of money on those, in the last 18 months. Our customers tell us, they have every intention of, sweating that CapEx and getting a return on it, right? The GB200s, they're just starting to show up.
Yes.
Those are the ones that some of the racks need up to 130 kW per rack.
And that's where you got to cool these things. So
that's correct.
Are you changing the design of the data center, or are you retrofitting with some sort of liquid cooling in some way, or how does that play out?
Yeah, so a couple of years ago, about 4 years ago, we decided, because we had been starting to see more of these high-performance computing workloads that were higher density, that, we needed a solution that could kind of pivot between water-cooled and air-cooled. So we came up with an MEP design that, utilizes a closed chilled water loop as its core cooling medium.
And is that immersion, or that's to the chip?
That's it's underneath the raised floor or above a slab.
Yes.
And from there, you end up in a, you distribute it via CDU.
Okay.
And then it goes to either water to the rack, like a rear door heat exchange, or water to the chip.
Okay.
And the water to the chip stuff is pretty new. We only have a couple of those deployments because the equipment for that is.
So what's the difference between the chip and the back of the rack? Like what?
So the back of the rack, it's kind of like a radiator.
Okay, yeah.
It fits on the back of the rack, and obviously the computer
is rolling through it.
Pulling that cold air.
Yeah.
Right. And then it's getting hot, obviously, on the other side. While water to the chip, the water goes to some manifold, which actually sits on top.
Yes, yeah.
And there's a heat transfer.
Yeah, yeah. So it's okay to run inside the existing data set, or you can retrofit enough. It's not like
we can pivot.
Throw it out. Yeah.
No, I mean, obviously, we have data centers of a lot of vintage. Some of them wouldn't be able to do that, but the vast majority can. And then obviously all the new data centers where these new workloads are going is exactly where we're deploying this technology.
Awesome. It's crazy. It's so hot.
So it's it's a good time to be in the space.
You get out of bed and punch the air, and then you just go, it's beautiful.
Let's see how long you can keep going.
Yeah. So how big's the team now?
So we're about 1,000 employees now.
Oh, wow.
Obviously we're spread out, by definition, our employee base is across our data center assets. And then obviously we have our centralized functions.
And how much innovation is there in the build itself in terms of like how you build the data center? I mean, a lot of people just think that's easy.
Yeah.
We're a real estate company. We're just going to put a slab, and that's why I think everyone jumps into it. But there's a huge amount of innovation in terms of the design, for the cooling, how you power, how you have redundant power. Like, how much of that is just a standard off the shelf versus what you bring in terms of innovation inside?
Yeah, I mean, I think us, like a lot of other data center operators, we have a preferred kind of design basis.
Yes.
When we look at these data centers, ultimately, obviously when we build, we think about cost on a per megawatt basis. We work with our construction
optimizing
partner.
that.
Yeah, exactly. Our construction partner, our architect, our engineering firm, our internal team. We're constantly, engineering it, cost engineering it, figuring out, how we can drive that cost lower. Because obviously, if we can deliver a redundant design for cheaper, then that is we can be more competitive in the marketplace, right? So that is an ongoing effort across the sector. And, over time, you're able to engineer some cost out, but you're also fighting inflation at the same time.
Yeah, you got
costs go up.
Yeah. But I guess the benefit of it, the incentive to reduce cost is a huge power game, i.e. if you can improve even small percentages of power consumption, you reduce costs. So there's like a real incentive to solve for that. And the other incentive is it's good from an environment perspective.
Correct.
So
Correct.
I know you guys are focused on that as well.
We are.
So, yeah.
Yeah, we as we're part of the DigitalBridge group of companies, which has a corporate
incredible company, by the way.
Thank you. It's been great partners of ours, since 2016. And, that mandate is to, be, 100% renewable on type 1, type 2 by 2030.
Okay.
And today, we've really made a lot of progress along that way. So today with renewable power, with RECs, with kind of grid mix, we're over 60% of the...
Which is impressive.
Hours.
Because I think the roughly US is what? 20%?
20.
Yeah. So you're actually getting an additional 40%.
Yes.
Which is not easy.
Yep.
Yeah. You got some countries like Brazil where they go, we're 90% sustainable power inside the data center. And you're like, yeah, but that's because you're 90% sustainable power in Brazil.
That's right. Because it's all...
You basically plugged it in like grid.
Listen, that's why it's a very popular data center, or one of the reasons.
Yeah.
One of the reasons.
So it's harder to do that in the US.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we're limited by, ultimately, as I talked about, we're in so many different markets. There's so many different utilities.
Yeah.
We're really dependent on the utilities.
What's providing in that region?
Kind of give us a product that is renewable, or they increasing their grid mix.
Yeah.
Renewable.
And as they increase, you just take that
benefit
feed
from
anyway.
that.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Brilliant. Well, we appreciate the partnership.
Yep.
We're excited about your growth. We're also going to keep building out into the data centers you've got, service the customers that you keep bringing on, and world domination.
I love it.
Yeah,
it's been a great partnership. Thank you very much, Michael.
It's a pleasure. Yeah, cheers. Thank you, Raul.
Thank you.
Yeah.